Welcome to our City Council meeting today, May 23rd, 2023. At this time, I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we are going to move directly into our invocation. We had the Honorable Reverend Herman Moore scheduled to do this today, and he was unable to make it. And so Brett Knifton, if I could have you come up to the podium, sir, he's willing to lead us in invocation. Please stand as we pray.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your presence here. We've asked you for that. We've asked you for your guiding wisdom for the leaders of this city. And we prayed for your kingdom to come and your will to be done in Amarillo, Texas. We thank you that even in Jeremiah 29:11, when Israel was lamenting for they were in captivity, you spoke, for I know the plans that I have for you, plans for blessing and not for cursing, to give you a hope and a future. And the rest of that, when they were facing that difficulty, you said that when you call upon my name, I will answer. And we thank you, God, that you are answering every day. You are speaking to the hearts of our leaders every day. You are speaking to every citizen and every gift that is represented in this room every day. And you are speaking for the city of Amarillo and the purposes that you have called it to. So, God, we do pray that thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we ask that you would give us this meeting, give us this day, give us this year. We ask, God, that you would forgive our trespasses as we've forgiven those who have trespassed against us. And God, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Brett. I really appreciate you stepping up and praying for us this morning. At this time, if you all will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Okay, next on our agenda, we do have announcements. Today, I don't believe we have any. Ms. City Secretary, do we have any announcements?
No, Mayor.
Okay, so we're going to move right along and be efficient with our time here today. We will do public comment at this time. I believe we have 2 people signed up for public comment, but I haven't seen either one of them, so let's open that up at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Stanley. And thank you for being here today to participate in our council meeting. We're happy you're here. I do want to point out we are changing from public address to public comment with this meeting. So we thank you for being here. We're glad you're here. At each posted meeting, we invite fellow community members to address City Council regarding to posted agenda items or items related to city business. Every speaker will have 3 minutes to address the council. At the end of 2.5 minutes, you will have a warning beep alerting you to wrap up your thoughts. We do ask you stay within your 3 minutes. Speakers are asked to, we do have a public hearing today on our agenda. Speakers are asked if you wish to talk about the public hearing that you do so either during public comment or during the public hearing, but not both, in order to help us keep accurate records. When you come to the microphone today, you'll state your name, you'll state if you live in Amarillo city limits, and you'll let us know if you're talking on, for, or against an agenda item, or share the topic that you wish to share related to city business. As a reminder, when we talk about items related to city business, if they are not on the agenda, council is limited by the Texas Open Meetings Act in how they can respond to those. They can respond with a matter of fact or of policy. Otherwise, they may decide to put the item on a future agenda or to refer you to staff to discuss your item with them. So with that, we've got 2 commenters. The first one, Daniel North. Is Mr. North in the room? And if not, then Robert Landon. Mr. Landon? Okay. That concludes everyone that has signed up, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. City Secretary. At this time, do we have anybody here in the audience? If you have not signed up that you would like to address your city council, please feel free. We'll give you an opportunity. All right, seeing none, we are moving right along this agenda. So at this time, council, do we have anything to review on the agenda, upfront items on this agenda? Anything you had questions over or concerns about?
No, Mayor.
I had some questions on the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll pull them off then as we get going. Our next item of business is item 6B. It is a discussion item for our city council to discuss the way in which we hold the meetings and the logistics. And so this is an item that I asked to be put on this. And so on this agenda, and I would like to discuss how we listen to you, how we do public comment versus public address, perhaps even how long we take in that as far as the amount of time that you have to address the council. Particular to that would be meeting times. We currently meet every other Tuesday, second Tuesday and fourth Tuesday, I believe. We'll stay pretty scheduled on that unless we have to move anything for a reason. But the time in which we meet with you currently is at 1 p.m. And so I'd like to open this up for discussion and just see if anybody would like to throw it out there on the council. Let's start with the time in which we meet. Currently at 1 o'clock, does everybody here on the council like the 1 p.m. time? Would you want to entertain other times that may be more suitable for us and for the public?
I would like to see us possibly make it more convenient for citizens to show up. A lot of people are working at this particular time. It's just a thought. I'd like to hear what the other council members say and what the public has to say.
You have an idea or question?
You know, I would agree. I think it's worth entertaining, to entertain different times just to see if we can get more citizens involved. I'm not necessarily for or against it, but definitely entertaining it. I'm not stuck on either way.
Okay. Councilman Smith, I know you've been doing the 1 o'clock time for some time. Can you tell us, did y'all move it several years ago? Did you try other
Well, we tried a lot of
times?
stuff.
Well, give us your
We
experience,
tried
if you would.
7:30 a.m., I think. I think other previous councils did 5:30 p.m. We settled on 1, mainly because, of course, we don't know how long the meeting's going to last. But I've heard 4 o'clock or 4:30 or 5:30. The counties, both counties, Potter and Randall, they have a 9 a.m. meeting. They have it during the day, during business times. I don't know how often they meet. The school board meets only monthly, and their meeting is at 5:30 p.m. I personally, there's a lot of staff members attend meetings, and that's kind of, I'll be flexible because I'm not here much longer.
Yes, sir.
But I like the 1 o'clock.
Okay. Let me give you my opinion here. I know we've had some long meetings. I think 9 o'clock, probably 9:30, maybe the latest I've gotten out of here. A lot of that has to do with executive session. So we want to be mindful of different entities, staff that stay in that late. We definitely don't want to push that back to where it's 11 or we're having to table things and come back for the next day. So I don't know that it's reasonable to go to a 6 p.m. meeting time with the agendas that we're going to carry. I think we want to allow ourselves 2-3 hours to do these meetings and try to be effective and efficient. I think they will be a little shorter than what we're used to in the past, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have a working load that we're going to have to carry. If we were to look at 3 o'clock, that might, in a typical 9 to 5 setting, if you were to say, well, I had to leave, work an hour early. I got off one day an hour early. I got there an hour late, but I missed invocation, maybe public comment, a few other things. But the working majority of the meeting you were able to attend to, that would also kind of keep us from getting into the 6, 7 o'clock p.m. schedule with our public, where you've checked out mentally, you have other things going, you're hungry, you're tired, whatever. And so for staff, for council, for everyone, I think we could shorten the duration of our meetings and move ourselves to a 3 p.m., still be fairly efficient with our time and not be held back, 6:30, 7 o'clock would be about the max, I would hope. Tom, I asked you first, Councilman Sherlin. What would your reaction be to a 3 p.m.?
I like the 3 p.m. idea. In fact, I would make a motion that we move the meetings to 3 p.m. every other Tuesday and go from there.
Okay, we're going to hold to our discussion item here for a minute, and then not take action on this today just because it's a discussion item we've got here. But what I'm hearing you say is you think the 3 p.m. could be a good solid. And I do want to get back to you, Councilman Smith, because you have the most experience in this. But Councilman Tips, 3, 4, 5, you have any thoughts to those?
Well, okay, so my concern is if we do back it up to 3, right, we've got pros and cons. So 1 o'clock is, if somebody wants to come for public comment, which I think is important, that's the citizen's voice, is sometimes you can say, hey, I'm going to take my lunch late, right, take a late lunch. If we do 3 o'clock, to your point, they may miss the invocation, they may miss public comment, but they would be for the meat of the meeting, right? Mm-hmm. So I get that, but I feel like that I think there's pros and cons that we need to consider, because if they do want to make public comment, 3 o'clock may be harder to be here for, right? Mm-hmm. So I just think that there's pros and cons, and then we do look at the staff. And we look at overtime, or what we do if we do carry on with a late meeting, then they're going to have either we look at overtime, or if we're looking at the budget, we have to say, okay, what days will they come in late? Maybe on meeting days they come in a couple hours late because we don't know how late the meetings are going to go. So I guess I'm just saying there's pros and cons that I think we need to look at, and I agree with you. I think this is a discussion item to really look at everything, because moving it later, great. Maybe more people can participate, but also fewer people may be able to comment.
I appreciate that. And I also know, like with Councilman Smith, they tried multiple things to see what worked. So it's not as though we would make this change and this is just the end all. So we could look at a 3, and then, if we were still feeling like maybe we didn't stretch it far enough, move it to 4 or whatever. But Councilman Smith, you've got the most experience on this. Can you tell us if you feel like this would have a positive outcome, or your opinion?
Well, I personally wouldn't have any problem with 3. But Don Tips brought up if it stayed at 1, people could take a late lunch and come and be at the first of the meeting. We don't know how long the meeting will last. Sometimes it went to 9 p.m., starting at 1. Now, that's not the usual. And we'd like it to be 2 or 3 hours, but I don't think we can control that. The agenda items and the differences of opinion, we got to have discussion, and it's going to be opened up more for the public to comment, so that may take more time. So I'd stick with 1 myself, but
Okay.
I'm biased.
Fair enough. I would like to ask our city manager, Mr. Miller, if we did get a consensus here today on this discussion item, what would be your next step? This isn't anything we would need to vote on to change the time. We're just doing business in front of our public. You would just need direction. Is there anything further you would want?
Mayor, I can take the input y'all have given me so far, and of course you and I will work together putting together the agenda, and we can just change the time in accordance with the conversation as you heard it.
Thank you, sir. I would like to know if anybody seated here today would be like to be recognized and would offer an opinion from a citizen.
Could I add one thing before?
Yes, sir.
I'm thinking about coming up to talk.
Yes, sir.
It was mentioned that there may be overtime. I don't know how many staff members are required to be here. I've heard 25 to 30 or more required to be here, and most of them are probably on salaries, not hourly. So
that's a good consideration. And then I know we run a city business, so like I don't know that even coming in at 10 is functional, knowing that you're going to stay late, meaning your phone's ringing at 8 o'clock, or somebody needs that email. So I think maybe not looking at that, but still trying to work within the confines of an 8 to 6 day, 8 to 7 at the latest. So anything else, any further discussion from council before we ask our citizens? Okay. At this time, we recognize somebody. Please raise your hand if you want to speak. Yes, sir. Noah. Sorry, Mr. Moore. Get to you next, sir.
I want to suggest, in fact, really this part of it, having citizens speak as the items come up, I think somewhat alleviates a lot of the issues with maybe moving to like a 3 p.m. time when some people might not be able to make, say, the public comment portion. And in fact, many other municipalities in the state, I know, for instance, the way that Canyon does their meetings is they have a public comment. I believe it's a public comment to maybe a public address, but they have it at the beginning of the meeting like Amarillo does, but they also allow citizens to choose to speak at that time or during the items as they come up, basically having a public hearing for every individual item. I think that could be beneficial. May have to work through how exactly that would work with consent agenda items, since those don't typically receive individual consideration, but that is a popular form that many municipalities use, basically have a public comment for every single item. I know that it also, some cities do it just in case. I know that it can sometimes be when there's an item that requires a public hearing, you can sometimes accidentally or almost accidentally skip that, and that kind of puts in a safeguard against that too. And so if someone comes in late, they may have missed the official public comment period, but if there's an item they still want to speak on, they may be able to get there in time to speak on that. So even just like this part, I think, alleviates some of those concerns, and it's in line with what many other municipalities do with their meetings.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And let me just say, I think you guys are an audience that's witnessing the desire to tweak and do a few things different as we move forward. Just the ability to speak and address different topics as they come up, I feel like is important. I think it's difficult to address the council in 3 minutes prior to the meeting and then not be able to offer any suggestions and then try to get with your councilman or member afterwards, which, life continues, things are busy, things are moving. So I am interested in doing this. I know that it can be abused. I know that we could get ourselves a little further out there. I'm willing to take that risk and then pull the reins back if we need to. I feel like myself and this council have the confidence to run these meetings with some decorum and at the same time let you guys speak to us and contribute and collaborate on items as they come up. I know Reverend Moore, I saw your hand go up. Would you like to speak, sir?
Thank you, Council. First, I'd like to humbly apologize for being late on doing the prayer. I do take it serious when I'm asked to be here, but I apologize for that. It won't happen again. And in my opinion, I do think that the 3 o'clock hour is more efficient. And I say that because I believe that the 1 o'clock interferes with the working public more than the 3 would. Then 3 o'clock, most people probably get off earlier more than they can on the 1 o'clock hour. Most working people are still working at 1 o'clock. Some have different shifts, and 3 o'clock seemed to me that it would provide more public people to show up. That's just my opinion, and I thank you.
Reverend Moore, I appreciate your opinion. And then let me ask our city secretary, do we have somebody signed up for our next meeting to offer the invocation already?
I can get that information for you. I have it in my office.
Reverend Moore, we'll have Ms. City Secretary get back to you. And I have been late a time or two to a meeting myself. And you know, I understand life happens, and we had a great fill-in. And so would love to have you come back and do either the next invocation or the next time that fits your schedule and ours.
My schedule is open whenever you need me.
Okay. Thank you,
If
Rev.
I may add, Mayor, I will tell you Reverend Moore is on my speed dial, as he knows, because he has offered to fill in any time we're short. So appreciate you, Reverend.
Okay, Mr. Skank, if you'd please come forward.
Welcome, new council and old council. You know, I heard some of the conversation. Some people speak pretty low when they get in because, you know, you get up here close and something, you know, I've always been concerned about public comment and 3 minutes and then doing it at the first of the meeting on something that's happening down the page, which in the past we did it at the end of the meeting to where people could address, and then during agenda items, not necessarily consent, but agenda items, you actually ask, is there any comment from the citizens? As you're, you know, once you've made the motion and it's going across the dais, that you actually, any questions from citizens, to where we come up and we have 3 minutes to say, you know, that zoning thing there, that blah, 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 you know, or that, you know, and I know some of those are, what do you call them? I lost it. Public hearings. But there's other items that aren't. And that always worked well in reference to a free flow of communication. And then if you did it at 3 o'clock, if people didn't show up till 4:30 or something like that, they could still maybe get a comment into you, coming down here going, anyway.
Right.
Maybe not. They'll be going, thank you. Take care of us.
Mr. Skank, thank you for your words. Mr. City Manager, at this time, I'd like to just let you work with this and with council and staff and put together a couple options, and then we will be able to discuss it and figure out how the best way is for us to move forward. And I believe that, you know, for our audience and our public, what you will see is a time change and a few other things that will be public comment related that will allow for an environment that helps us collaborate a little bit better together. So, okay, so that concludes item 6B. We're moving on to item 6C. Do I have any requests for any future agenda items from any of the council?
Yes, Mayor, I have 3 I would like to put to you for your consideration.
Okay.
I would like a review and take possible action on the new city hall as the first one.
Yes, sir.
The second one, I would like to review and take possible action with the contract we have with the advertising firm we have for the COVID. I believe it's owned by Mary Cohen.
Yes, sir.
And the third one, I would like to hear a review from the fleet supervisor on our city fleet, if those meet your approval.
Specifically, a little more direction on what you're looking for from staff, the entire city fleet, or
what I was looking at is
department?
basically the truck fleet, pickup fleet. I noticed a lot of things. We have worn out emblems on the side of the trucks. A lot of them look dirty, filthy. I think we need to review that and see what kind of maintenance we need to do to make our city equipment look good.
Okay. Councilman Sherlin, thank you. Mr. City Manager, does that give you enough direction on those 3 items, or you have a question?
No, I think we've got what we need. We'll work with you to get all those on as soon an agenda as possible. The only thing I would say, to Councilman Sherlin is as we work with the mayor, if some of the items aren't going to be ripe for the next meeting, I will communicate with you when we can have those ready for you and make sure that works for what you're looking for.
Any other future agenda items requested here today? No. Okay, at this time, we're going to move forward to our consent agenda. In looking at the consent agenda, I would ask if any member of the council has any of these items that they would like further discussion on or pulled off before we vote on the consent agenda.
Yes, sir. I do.
Councilman Sherlin, what would you like pulled off?
I would like 7E, 7G, 7H, 7J, 7L, 7M, and 7O.
Can I clarify? Did you say 7N as in Nancy?
No, M as in Mary.
M as in Mary. 7M. And then what was your last one, sir?
7O.
Okay. Any other items anyone would request to be pulled off before voting on the consent agenda? Nope. No further? Okay. At this time, do I have a motion on the consent agenda item that will reference all of those items that we'll be taking off here today?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'll make a motion. We take off 7E, G, H, J, L, and M, as in Mary, O, for further discussion.
Are you moving that the consent agenda with the removal of these items would be accepted as presented, sir?
Yes, Mayor.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a
Mayor,
second. Yes.
Point of order, let me make sure I have all those we're excluding. E, G, H, J, L, M as in Mary, and O?
Correct.
Thank you.
Ms. City Secretary, would you care to weigh in on, would it be best to vote on each of these individually, or would we have any of these that we'd want to group together in a presentation and vote on them together?
You would want to vote on them separately as individual items. One other path you could proceed on, of course, it would take failing the motion on the table right now, but you could also discuss them before voting as a whole. So if you wanted staff to discuss, and I'm going to lean on City Manager, Mr. Miller.
Okay.
But that is another way you could proceed, is to get your information ahead of time. And then if you wish to vote on all the items, go ahead and vote your consent agenda. If not, then pull the ones out you'd rather vote separately.
Mr. City Manager, you have a recommendation?
It depends on how much of a presentation Councilmember Sherlin would like. We can move back to a 6A type situation where we're addressing all the questions from all of the regular meeting attachments and all that for the consent agenda on those items, and we can address those questions, and then you could approve or consider the consent agenda all in one vote. Or we can go ahead and, as the motion to approve the agenda minus these items, or the consent agenda minus these items, could go ahead and get approved, and then we can just take each one of those things individually. It would be up to you, sir.
I don't think the discussion would take long on these items. I'd like more information on.
Okay. I think just as a point of practice for a new council, it gives us an opportunity to motion vote. We'll just take them one at a time. That way we're going slow. We don't skip any steps. And then everything will be recorded correctly in your minutes. So at this time, I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda, less these specified items as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes with a 4-0 vote. Okay. Mr. Miller, would you please take 7E with the staff?
Right. We've got Mitch Normand in the room to come in and just do a very high-level explanation of 7E and then answer any questions council might have. Mitch? We also have me and Laura Storrs and a number of other people in the room who might be able to offer input as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ed.
So for item 7E, was there a specific question, or you just want me to review what the service is?
The questions I had, I guess I have a hard time understanding why we need to issue a $400,000 contract to one agency. I don't know. I know when I was in business previously, I used numerous agencies. The reason being, some were better at some things than they were at other things, like different departments. If I needed a warehouseman, I'd use this one. If I needed a managerial fill-in, I would use this one. And I was basically just wondering why we would have a $400,000 contract to one company only and not use the resource that's out there and available.
Okay. So the $400,000 estimate spend that's reflected on the item is just an anticipated amount. It doesn't absolutely mean that that's the amount that will be spent. So when we go out for the RFP process, which is the request for proposal, we specify the general labor needs that we need on temporary basis, and then vendors are able to bid on those services as a group. If there's ever a unique circumstance where our vendor that was awarded the RFP bid is unable to satisfy that requirement, we're able to utilize specialized services. But it consolidates all of our spends through one temporary service group instead of managing multiple contracts.
Is there an advantage to that?
Yes, sir, because we're able to coordinate and establish a relationship with one sole provider rather than have multiple providers and upkeep those individual relationships or contracts. Again, it's contracts. And I can't speak to the procurement side of it. I don't know if we're even able to go into multiple contracts on the temp services, but it has been beneficial to work with one sole temp provider.
How often do you use this service?
It depends on department needs. So a department may need extra support for special projects. They may need just extra skilled labor, maybe administrative support. It really depends. I don't have a standard utilization.
City manager, do you have a proposal that, do you like having one, or what is your thoughts on this?
Well, I think there's a variety of variables. In this case, we're talking about temp services for multiple different departments. Many times the temp services that we're securing are going to be in excess of $50,000, potentially, depending on what it is and how many people we need. This will keep us from having to coming back to council for the same question multiple times during the year. You're also going to get, I think, typically you're going to get the best pricing you can possibly get when someone's doing a lot of temp services being proposed in one contract. It has all the hourly rates for specific jobs in it rather than going piecemeal. So I think we're going to spend less over time for the service if we secure it all through one company in a bulk manner. That said, we can absolutely not do this. It might affect our ability to get temp services quickly, which is something that typically happens. But we can do it however council wants to do it. We are proposing that this would be the most cost-effective and most efficient way of providing the service. If there's an idea that we can do it more cost-effectively or efficiently, we'll certainly look into that if you'd like.
Does a service cost us more money than if we actually had our HR department hiring people or keeping a pool of people ready to hire?
Well, we actually do still do that. This doesn't relieve us of the HR responsibilities to hire people. This is to address people that we can't, positions that we have not been able to fill.
That's
or an
a
unusual
question I
need.
have, Mayor.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
What was the process in choosing this agency?
So we went through the, we call it an RFP, the request for proposal process. So we stipulate the general types of labor that we're looking for and give a a general job description of the duties the positions would perform. And through our purchasing department, the RFP is marketed to vendors for them to bid on those services and provide the price estimates to provide the services described.
So is it low bid, or is it we have a prior relationship with them, we've used them in the past, so we have good experience, or like how is that? I understand the bid process, but how are they chosen?
So pricing is one of the components through the RFP process. You look at the vendor's ability to also provide the stipulated requirements or the city's needs. And then past relationship, I believe, was also considered in the bid process.
Okay. So we did look at other agencies, and we
Yes.
felt like this was the best fit.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Norman, I'm looking here, were there 8 or 9 different agencies that you took quotations or proposals from on that?
I can't recall this time. I know there were multiple, but I can't recall the number.
Mayor Stanley,
15.
Oh, was there 15?
there are 10, it looks like. We do have the score sheet as backup in your agenda packet.
I didn't count them all, but I do know it was multiple. It wasn't just a single source bid. Councilman Smith, do you have anything that you had a question on this item, sir?
I don't have a question.
Okay. So Councilman Sherlin, I guess I'm going to ask you for a little leadership in this. I know you wanted to pull this off for some discussion and some wherewithal and kind of business practices, and I appreciate that, especially with your executive experience previously. Bless you. In hearing what you heard, does it leave you with further questions, or for this particular item, do you think you're comfortable?
I think I'm comfortable with this at the time, Mayor.
Okay.
I think we could go ahead if you want to pass this one item, or if you want to wait till we go to the list, or however you'd like to handle it.
I think we're going to go one at a time, and then that way we get them done. Before we do that, Mr. Norman, you have anything else that you could offer on this item, or you feel like we've cleared it up?
No, sir. I have nothing additional.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
At this time, I would consider a motion on item 7E.
I'll make a motion to accept 7E as worded in the agenda.
I will second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on item 7E. Any further discussion on this one, council? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 7E passes 4-0 vote. And we are going to go down the list to item 7G. Mr. City Manager, who would you have that might be able to give us a little bit more information on that one?
All right, Mayor, we've got Bo Folks, General Manager at the Civic Center. He'll present the item for us. This is for chairs to be used at the pavilion for events out there. Bo.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This particular item is to purchase seating that can be utilized at the new Santa Fe Pavilion on Grant and 4th. In the assembly of the building of this pavilion, we did not have any FF&E figured into the base price, and this gives us the ability to have seating. We've got tables already on hand that can be utilized for this facility, but we do not have seating over there. It's very impractical and restrictive for us to try to move seating from the main Civic Center facility over to the pavilion anytime we need it. And this is a space that we just don't know exactly what the absolute usage of it's going to be yet. There's a lot of ideas out there floating around, from concerts, wedding receptions, sporting events, you name it. And we need some FF&E for that facility. So this is purchasing 2,000 chairs for that facility.
Okay, at this time, Councilman Sherlin, if you go forward with your questions.
The question I have, when we built this facility, was there ever an intent to be putting chairs and tables up over there? Or is this an afterthought?
I would imagine that there was some anticipated usage. Its initial design was to accommodate the WRCA with their stalls during the rodeo, but when the ceiling height was increased on this facility to include other types of events, and the concrete foundation was added to it, that opened up many more possibilities for the use of this facility.
As you stated, we really don't know what this facility would be used for. We're still out trying to understand what we can use it for. To me, I'm not sure if I'm willing to spend $167,000 for a maybe or what we might do with it. I just felt like it was originally intended for the WCR rodeo. And then Mr. Stanley had the ceiling raid that we might be able to use it for volleyball and basketball.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was never any discussion as far as having the ability to have seating arrangements, table arrangements. Now, I'm not saying those aren't bad ideas, but I'm not sure I want to invest $167 until we do further research on that particular issue. I read there, I think the money's available, but
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure we couldn't use that money somewhere else more efficiently. That's just my thought, Mr. Mayor.
Just to give a little bit of context, in our Coliseum, we've got the blue Coliseum chairs that are set out on the floor anytime we've got a concert in there and have floor seating. And we're the proud owners of around 2,000 seats for that Coliseum. The Coliseum floor is 1/4 the size of this pavilion. Okay? There are many events that we could not have. We could not have graduations. We could not have concerts, things of that nature without that seating available in that facility. Therefore, we've already had many contacts. I've talked to promoters for Hispanic concerts that like to do things outdoors, areas to where they can stand up and dance as well as sit down and enjoy the show. We've been contacted by a promoter that wants to bring a boxing match in. We just can't. We've got to look forward and have the equipment available to us to where we can maximize the revenue capabilities of that facility once it opens.
I think to get to Councilman Sherlin's question, it's not that there's an absence, or I know Bo said I'm not sure exactly what we would do. We've had a number of requests for events and scheduling and things like that that we will not be able to accommodate unless we do something like this. It doesn't mean that we have to do it, but to be in a position where we can accommodate those events when they ask for them, that's the reason why we're looking to buy these. The funds could be used on other Civic Center related things, maintenance, buying things for the Civic Center proper, something like that. So there are other things we could do with the money. The thought is, based on the interest that we've seen with the pavilion since we got it up, and it's not even open yet. I mean, we're not done with the construction yet, but the volume of calls of interest has been surprising, I think, to use Bo's word. So we want to make sure that we're prepared, because this is going to be, unlike a lot of things at the Civic Center, this is potentially going to be something that will actually make money.
So if I could weigh in there, just because this does go to a previous discussion with previous council in the way of, like, we were going to spend $2+ million for what we had originally designed as kind of a single-purpose shelter event. And so by expanding it, increasing the ceiling height and then doing a few other things, this isn't the last ask. And the reason it won't be is because what we've seen here is that we have a demand, we have a market here for lease space and venue. And so I would ask you, as we're looking at this, Councilman Sherlin, more in an ROI, less in a straight expenditure, I would ask you, Mr. Folks, do you have, and I know you don't have specifics, but could you give me a general understanding of how much demand, how many phone calls, what would this look like if you leased it out for a full year in revenue?
That's a little hard to predict at this early point. Because it's not open just yet, and we have not promoted the facility just yet until it is open. But there has been a lot of outside interest in this facility. Community markets, like I said, receptions, concerts, boxing now, all of a sudden, basketball tournaments, volleyball tournaments, pickleball.
Yeah.
So there are multiple interests and ideas coming to head for this space. And we would like to maximize on the ability to bring in revenue.
And that
On
is
some
our-
of these, excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
on some of these events, could we not rent chairs?
Not practical, sir. Not for that
Why?
many. Not for that many chairs and have them come in, and our staff have to handle them, store them, maintain them. It's the least effective concept of providing for this space.
Okay, Don.
Our expectation is to make money off of this, correct? I mean, I know you said there's
Oh,
no way
yes.
to monetize this at this point, even future projections. But that's our intent, is to
Correct.
make money off of this.
You bet.
Now, I will say I did price these chairs. I'm not going to lie. I did. This is a good price for the chairs.
$83 each, roughly.
Yeah.
Right. And so do you want to weigh in on what you found that you could buy a nice chair for?
Well, for that same chair, of course, not bidding $2,000, but it was about double that price, actually. So, yeah. So, I
And
mean,
the- and
the
the
price
compa-
per chair is well within what you would expect. I mean, it's a
Correct.
good one.
Correct. And the company we're buying these from is well known for this type of
Yeah.
industry type product, and it's designed for heavy usage.
Yeah.
Okay. I do want to weigh. Oh, go ahead, Councilman Smith.
2,000 chairs would cover what percentage of that facility? All of it? 50% of it?
Probably 35%.
Okay. Where would you store the chairs when they want to play pickleball?
We do have a couple of storage warehouses just to the west of this property, and we've got space there that will accommodate storage of these chairs. And it allows for the minimal traction to move these to and from storage to the space.
So you've got chairs at the Civic Center, but you don't want to move those because you couldn't have two things going on at the same time.
Correct. And they're not designed for the heavy movement and usage that these types of chairs will endure. So,
But you could move them easily when the WRCA comes in.
yes.
Anything else, Councilman Smith?
No.
Good question. I would like to say, and then I'll ask for further discussion, so I'm not trying to end the conversation. We built this building, and we built ourselves a problem. Now we have customers, and that's a great problem to have. And so this goes to what Center City, CVB, things like this are trying to do. This backs them up, and we need these resources. So I know when we went and spent $2.5 million for that building that we were going to have additional cost. I mean, we may be looking at future items in the way of restrooms or some sort of concession type facility where we could have food trucks and other things that are out there easily. So this is an investment. What I think maybe we're missing here as a council that's new, we've been given a small request, and I don't know that we've seen that pro forma that could come back to council in the way of like, hey, these are the things that we're now hearing. These are the phone calls that we're fielding. If we research this with these types of promoters, these are their needs. These are our potential cost. And I understand construction well enough to know that these can't be finite amounts sometimes as easy as chairs. But moving forward, I think for this council, it would be more productive in having some additional maybe pro forma information that we could base some of these ROI type decisions on, because these are investments, not expenditures for that particular facility, and we want to support it. We don't want to build it for the one-time use and then just let it sit there and collect dirt and dust. So, Mr. City Manager, would that give you enough information as a directive to go out and maybe get the ball rolling on that type of pro forma?
Yeah, we'll do the best job we can, not knowing who all is going to want to do it, knowing that people will want to do it. So a little bit of it's working forwards. If we wait until we know exactly how many requests we'll have over the course of a year, we're not going to have an accurate understanding, because once they know there's not chairs, they're not going to ask. But we'll put together our best estimate on pro forma. We'll also and I think we've already started working on the cost for court amenities, the actual courts, the goals, the nets, all the things that would be necessary for sporting events. We're working on the cost of building a bathroom facility that could also do some food service. Would not touch any of the existing Santa Fe Depot buildings, but would be out there to be able to facilitate large events at the pavilion. So we can bring you all those costs, but anything we do as far as performance is going to be an estimate.
Sure, I understand that, sir. So as a recommendation for council, I think this is something, price per chair, it has a good value. I know the need is there. I don't feel like it's money that's speculative. I think it's money we're having to spend, and you've got it in your budget. Sure. So, Councilman Sherlin, I would ask, since you brought this one, what else do you need in order to be comfortable with this, or would we want to look at how much time's involved in getting these chairs, and if we tabled this one for 2 weeks, would that affect
it would take a little bit. This particular company deals with large volumes. This particular chair that we've selected, they've got about 1,000 of the 2,000 chairs about ready to ship whenever the trigger is pulled, when they've been given approval. The other 1,000 will come in just a few short months. They've got to do the chrome plating of the leg systems before they can do the final assembly of the chairs. So,
what's the soonest date that this facility could be used for any event?
Our first event is already booked. It's the city's Iron Horse Rodeo. That's scheduled for July 20th through the 22nd, I believe. They're setting up on the 17th, so that's our first planned activity. It's not a revenue-generating activity for the Civic Center because it is a city-sponsored event, but we're looking forward to that. We're having our grand opening celebration on Friday, June 30th, and in which y'all are all encouraged to participate in and welcome to.
So no need for chairs for those two events?
No, sir.
Okay.
We were able to procure some of the 5-tier aluminum bleacher sets from Parks and Rec, some that they were able to dispense of a while back. We've got 12 of those on hand right now. That saved us about $8,500 a set times 12 by being able to get those from Parks and Rec. So.
Okay. And what's the lead time on those other 1,000 chairs that they could get to us?
I think they've speculated 3 months.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Folks. I appreciate you.
You bet.
Any further discussion from council on this item?
I think I'd like to just see more information brought forth.
So in seeing more information going forward, are you wanting to table this one item for the next meeting? Are you comfortable moving forward with this item, knowing that you will get more information in a pro forma and, additional expenses that we'd be looking to invest in that building?
Yes, I could do that.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'd entertain a motion on item 7G, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we accept item 7G with stipulation of more pro forma, and we'll go ahead and accept that.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on item 7G. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes with a 4-0 vote. On to item 7H, Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got Sandy Elliott or possibly Laura Storrs. I'm not sure which one's going to be handling this. Oh, or Mitch Norman. But this is the excess workers' compensation insurance. Last year we paid $201,000. It's gone up about 12.5% this year for a 12-month. We've extended it to a 13-month contract to be able to normalize the renewal dates. But this is for $246,000 for 13 months. Mitch, I probably took away most of your thunder, but
Yes.
Go ahead.
As Mr. Miller stated, we are experiencing a premium increase on our workers' comp excess insurance, It is an extension for 13 months to align our workers' comp policy with all the other insurance policies that have a July renewal date. So this is for a 13-month contract. And the proposed renewal is with our incumbent carrier. If there are any questions, I'll answer those for you.
Well, when I was researching this, I found out we only had one quote for this item.
Actually, so the way we have a broker of record that we prepare an application through our broker of record, and then they solicit bids from potential carriers, and we only had one carrier that responded to the application.
I know in my business experience that I have plenty of times we use a broker as well.
Yes, sir.
And I always had 2 or 3 bids come back. And I was just questioning the one bid. I mean, do we have a bad reputation that people don't want to bid with the city? Or I just wonder, you know, when you only have one person that is willing to bid back, there's something that's not right.
It's not necessarily that we've had a bad reputation. This is a challenge that we've been experiencing over the past several years with the insurance markets for all of our policies. It's becoming increasingly difficult to secure coverages from municipalities. And then there are also more, I'll say, creative tactics for providing coverage. For example, our broker of record works with insurance providers to provide us layered coverage, where in the past we were able to go through possibly just one insurance provider to provide all coverage. That's not the case today. So it's just becoming more complex and difficult, and there are fewer people in the market insuring public entities.
I also noticed this comes up at the end of this month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why would we wait so long to get a bid on that, Mr. Manager?
I don't think there's a long wait to get the bid on it. We wanted to get it before it was expired.
Okay.
And I can speak to that, being in the insurance industry. I'll tell you, and to his point, there's fewer and fewer. It's an exposure issue. When you're dealing with a municipality, a lot of companies don't want to take on that exposure anymore. And a 12.5% increase is not that much right now. Not in the environment that we're in, and not with the bills. I mean, you think of medical billing and the amount that those have gone up. It's well within. I mean, that's not uncommon that we only hear from one, and the 12.5% increase is not. It's not.
Thank you. I'm good.
Good discussion on that. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion we accept item 7H.
Second. No.
Okay, I have a motion. Councilman Sherlin, a second from Councilman Smith on that one, Ms. City Secretary. Any further discussion on 7H? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes with a 4-0 vote. On to item 7J, Mr. City Manager, please.
All right, Mayor, we've got John Collins in here to answer any specific questions we have. I'm going to give just a little bit of a high-level overview on this one first. This is one that was of particular interest to us here in the city, or staff, from a staff standpoint at least, because the cost on this has gone up. John's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I wrote down 338% over the same time last year. A lot of it's due to a lot of the safety restrictions that have been placed on transporting chlorine as a result of some of the train wrecks that we've had over the course of the last year. So this price is significantly higher than anything we've paid in the past, to the point that we're going to start looking at transitioning some of our wastewater treatment plants to UV filtration, or a UV process at some point in the future as equipment ages out. That's not the case at this point, and we're going to need to buy the chlorine. But John, walk us through it real quick.
Sure. We need to buy about 330 tons of chlorine. This is for all 3 plants. It's the only treatment for water that's permittable. For wastewater, as was mentioned, there's an alternate treatment of ultraviolet light. It's costly to construct, but right now it's roughly a break-even price between the two. And chlorine has been rising in cost my whole career. Now, lately, chlorine has gone up specifically because of production and transportation due to the COVID lockdowns. We also had a train wreck that nearly prevented us from getting chlorine to Our water plant this last time, we came really close to running out, but we were able to obtain it from an alternate source.
My concern on that was we only had one quote. That was my basic concern, was when I checked, I believe there was just one quote, and I was wondering if this went out on a bid or, you know, on a contract, or how are we doing that?
I would have to get with the purchasing office for that answer. I did look back in the records, though, as a result of your email, and found that there's only ever been one other bidder called DPC, and there was 1.5% difference between, this was 3 years ago, between the bid that our contractor gave and this bid that they gave.
Was it 1.5% cheaper or 1.5%?
0.57% higher.
Higher? Okay.
So they were virtually the same cost, and that's pretty common with commodities because they want to sell you something, but they want to make a profit, so they're beating each other by pennies. When you get to real equipment, you get a big difference. Commodities are usually pretty close.
Okay.
Bit of an anecdotal input on that because I don't have the exact feedback from purchasing. What I understand is that with the enhanced safety requirements for transporting hazardous materials over the rail and through cities, you have to have a significantly modified way to. Trey, why don't you take it away? I don't want to wax into.
Trey Kepley with the purchasing department, but yes, sir, we do go out for competitive solicitations on these items. And this last time, we only received one bid. Yes, sir.
Mr. Manager, I just for my own comfort, I would always want, if at all possible, more than one bid or notations put down why we didn't get multiple bids, because to me, when you only have one bid and it's out before the public, it makes things look like we're not doing our job.
What we will do is verify that we have solicited bids from any vendor willing to submit a bid. The one thing we can't really say is why we didn't get a bid from somebody. One, we don't know who all the potential vendors are, but if they don't submit, they're also not telling us why they're not submitting. So we'll make sure that we're doing as inclusive and wide-ranging of a request process, but I don't know that we could tell you why people aren't bidding.
Mayor, Councilmember Floyd Hartman, Assistant City Manager. I did want to address a component about that. Amarillo is kind of isolated from a lot of population areas, and this is a highly caustic material and has a lot of restrictions because it's on transportation. Historically, we've been limited to one or two companies that would bid chlorine in this region, and it's based off the ability to get it to this isolated region under the transportation requirements for safety. And so it is not unusual on the chlorine and some of the other hazardous chemicals for us to get one bid because there's limited suppliers in our region.
This would be the information I would like to put on.
Yeah. Okay.
When I see something like this.
We'll do better on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, I would have no problem if I knew that was the case, but not knowing, I'm going to ask the question.
Yes.
Okay?
And I think it's important. These are good discussions, and this is somewhat relational in us sitting down and just getting going, and so we'll work this out, and it can be a little messy in the front. I think it's fine. My question. Smaller municipalities may struggle with this same issue. Are there grants available knowing that we have a 338% increase in chlorine over the last year?
Most of the federal programs are encouraging participation by locals. Now, on chlorine, operational costs are limited in the grant programs, but the TCEQ and the Texas Water Development Board specifically have programs available to help rural communities and the smaller systems. Operationally, they're challenged with the grants, but we've also had other state and federal agencies intervene with the chlorine shortages because it's required across the nation. So as that transportation problem occurred, the feds, state and federal governments got involved along with the railroads and limited stockpiling and made sure that all communities had access to it. And so there's different forms of that. We buy the 1-ton cylinders, which we're in a competition then with large systems. And most of those small systems buy the cylinder size, the 150-pound cylinder size, or even the hypochlorite systems, the liquids. So you can change. The smaller system has a quicker ability to change to hypochlorite, a liquid system, which can be the Clorox. You can go to the grocery store and buy Clorox and mix that to a certain standard. So the smaller the system, the more options they have. Does that help?
Yes, sir, it does. You have a question, sir?
I do. Have we looked into grants converting to UV? Because I'm guessing that's probably, that's where they're wanting us to go.
We have not specifically historically, but everything we're doing, we're looking at grants from this point forward, especially related to environmental impacts that this would have.
Because UV, that's really where we want to go. That way we talked about that before, the danger of the chloride.
Our wastewater plants probably do qualify under some Department of Interior grants for upgrades.
Okay.
That might include parts of the plant that otherwise we wouldn't, but they may be needed also.
While we had not, while we were aware of grants, we had not previously actively solicited those because the cost of chemicals and everything, it would have been, even with the grant, it would have cost us more to operate and install the UV than to continue operating our chlorine system, treatment processes at the wastewater treatment plants. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at it now is once you triple the price of the chlorine, well, then all of a sudden those other things become more viable because you're not going to be spending any more money than we will if we continue to spend this elevated cost. Don't know that that's going to be a long-lasting situation where we're going to continue to pay 300+% more than what we used to pay, but that certainly made it a lot more viable and realistic to look at those, and that's why we're actively doing it now.
So we are. To your point, we are actively looking for grants.
Well, I'm going to let John. John told me about this yesterday. So about the UV transition. That'd take at least 5 years to do. Also,
this is only viable in wastewater plants. It's not permittable in the water treatment plant. Right now, Hollywood infrastructure is in bad condition. We can't start this project now because we're reconstructing the digesters, and there's some stuff we have to do, the clarifiers first, and you can't take down too many items in the plant at the same time. But the intent is to put the UV lights in Hollywood first. Now, River Road has a few more years left on it. We want to go ahead and get the life out of the chlorine injectors there, and then we'll do UV treatment at that plant. And the big advantage is safety. The cost has been about even for about the last decade or so. Chlorine is continuing to go up, and it's mainly because government regulations are going up. That's driving the price up, and the number of people willing to manufacture it has been dwindling. So, yes, I anticipate the price of chlorine continuing to go up very quickly. The cost of UV lights is the bulbs and the power, which is large, but it's going up at a reasonable amount.
So as we convert one plant, we can move the chlorine to the others that we're still operating on chlorine, right? So we can kind of cycle through those.
Correct.
Is that
We'll
accurate?
do Hollywood and then River Road, and then Osage, the water treatment plant, will need it until the laws change.
So anytime we purchase chlorine and we're not at risk at not using it, we will be able to use it, correct?
No, the risk is in storage. Now, we're not taking the whole 300 and some odd tons all at the same time. It's gradually delivered.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, staff, for coming up and contributing in that. That's very helpful. Any further discussion from council on 7J?
Is there a possibility of a forward contract?
You'll have to define what you mean by forward contract. You mean the next year?
Yeah.
So you're saying if we are forecasting another increase, could we buy in advance? Is that what you're asking? To hold our commodity price and hedge? John, is that something you can speak to, sir?
Okay, realize we're buying tons of this each year, so we have limited space, and then with the regulations on the storage of it, this has to be inside, so we only have so much room. We can't even take one whole year's worth of chlorine at one time. And there's some hazard, and if you'd like a tour of any of the plants, I'd be happy to show you the physical limitations.
I think that does answer it. So there are ways to hedge in futures, but probably this would be one of the most dangerous commodities you would be trying to
I will
pre-purchase.
get rid of our use of chlorine as fast as I can, which I think is our best direction rather
Okay.
than, and I agree, I like to squeeze pennies. That's
Understood, sir. Okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion on 7J.
I make a motion, we accept 7J as stated.
I'll second it.
So I have a motion from Councilman Sherlin, a second from Councilman Tips on item 7J. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes with a 4-0 vote. Moving on to item 7L. Mr. City Manager.
Right, Mayor, we've got Kyle Sneederjohn, Director of Capital Projects, Development Engineering, to present the item. This is change order, the last change order that's going to be requested on Martin Road Lake improvements. The bulk of this is a culvert being installed underneath the road south of the lake system. But there are a couple of other things. Kyle, if you'll walk us through it and answer any questions council might have.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kyle Sneederjohn, Director of CP&D Engineering. And I thought maybe this would come up, and so I had sent a presentation. Looks like Andrew's already got it. I'm happy to go through just a general project overview and then get into the dollars, or if anybody wants to go straight to a question, I can do that too. Or we want to see kind of a general overview. Okay, perfect. Well, so maybe taking a step back just to the project, what's on your screen right now is kind of the original goals and objectives of this job. The blue picture down in the bottom is the previous floodplain of the Martin Road Lake area. It includes 143 private structures, which the goal of the project was to remove as many of those private structures from the floodplain as possible. And with the excavation activities that have taken place out at the lake, even currently, the floodplain will be remapped to that darker gray area in the upper picture, which you can see is a significant reduction of that neighborhood and getting those private properties and private structures out of the floodplain. We estimated that value of private structures at about $15 million back in 2011, 2012. Value was kind of when we were setting up the original scope of the project, and that's where that $15 million in private property value comes from. That actually, the excavation and actually earthwork that has taken place to get us to that point, we have some paperwork to do on the state and federal level with FEMA and to realize those benefits. But obviously, that's a benefit to those individuals and those property owners right there, as well as a benefit to our overall NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program premium that the entire community would pay, and the entire community would see a benefit of our community having less risk to the overall insurance program. We also had a goal of providing some operational functionality on both of those lakes. We can talk about that in depth a little bit more, but then establishing, we also had a big goal of reestablishing a neighborhood amenity for that lake. Overwhelmingly, when we went and had community input and conversations, access to the water was one of the things that the community wanted, that they brought to us, and so I think you'll see in our design that we were trying to achieve that. And then establishing a more maintainable infrastructure. So one of the bigger problems with that lake was that our operations crews had a very difficult time maintaining what was there. And so we had goals and objectives to do that. Phase one of the project was actually the excavation of both the east and the west lake. Phase two of the project, we focused on repairs to the east lake, specifically right at Dale Street, and that was a borderline emergency type project. We needed to do some work to protect Dale Street and the actual structure of the street right there. So that kind of got shoved in. We had originally envisioned this as just a single phase 1 and 2, and we kind of split things up as we needed to. Phase 3, what we are currently under operation right now, is repairs to the West Lake and completion of basically a master plan for that entire area that includes the amenities, those neighborhood amenities and community amenities that I discussed. How the project was funded. The project was funded by phase through the CIP process and through allocations in the budget to the Drainage Utility Fund. The enterprise fund of Drainage Utility carried that load. Phase one was approximately, project cost about $3.9 million. Then we did some additional scoping and design work intermediately, and then we released that phase two Dale Street project for about $1.3 million. Some additional construction phase services for the master project, and then kicked off our phase 3 and 4, which was approximately $10.8 million. We have had one change order to that $10.8 million contract previously, and that was about $36,000. And then I'm bringing to you this change order number 2 for that $10.8 million project for a change order of approximately $391,000. Which would bring that the total project cost, the total vision, and all those things combined to about $17 million in whole. Again, that was mainly funded through the initial project. Phase 1 was funded through an allocation of the drainage utility and basically a budget item for about $7 to $7.2 million. And then the CIP in 1920, we stockpiled about $1 million in preparation for the project. And then 2021, you see us do it again. We stockpiled about another $5.5 million. Then we actually bid the project about that time. And when the bids came in, the drainage utility, through their budgeting process, ultimately contributed another $3.5 million. And then we are finishing out this contract, including this change order request, with a transfer of about $295,000 from the drainage E&I that will complete this contract and this change order that I'm proposing to you today. That puts us at about just short of $17.8 million as a total. If you notice, that total in revenue is larger than my expense, and that's on purpose and gives me a little bit of cushion and some ability to work with a construction contract. And I don't have to be scared of that overage because it is an enterprise fund. It can only be spent in an enterprise fund, and anything that's remainder at the end of the contract rolls right back into that same enterprise fund to be reallocated as we either see fit through the CIP or through budgeting process. Any further questions?
Thank you, Kyle. That's a good review. That's a lot of work you're doing over there. I know the $354,000 change order you highlighted. Could you just tell me the specifics of what's included in that $354,000?
Perfect. Yes, sir. Absolutely. The biggest piece, I have this kind of itemized list, as well as in your packet. You should have an itemized list of the actual executed change order. And so big ticket items, the biggest ticket item was 48-inch corrugated metal pipe that extends across 15th Street there on the north side of Martin. Effectively, we had hoped to tie on to that existing system, and it is a corrugated metal pipe, so almost exactly what you think about as a culvert, and so that pipe had been installed for many years, and effectively when we went to tie onto it, we had to demo a little bit and then try to tie onto it, and every time we touched it, it just demoed a little bit more and a little bit more, and all of a sudden we were out in the middle of 15th Street. And so that was the biggest expense. We basically pulled out that corrugated metal pipe and replaced it with 48-inch concrete pipe, and so we shouldn't have to mess with that, and it won't be impacting that neighborhood for many years to come. That was the biggest expense. We did additional site grading on site. If you look at those itemized items in the change order, we really just kind of changed some scope. It was an overall add to the project, but I think you'll see like a $40,000 deduct and then maybe a $100,000 add. And so yes, we did change scope, but we also were comprehensive in our nature of being strategic in that regard. We did drill an additional water well, and what happened here is that basically we are adding that fishing amenity, and we needed a freshwater supply of X per year based on what's going to evaporate, what's going to evapotranspirate into that area. And so we did a preliminary engineering report, drilled a test well in that location, and we had a forecast of only getting about 8 gallons a minute from our well at that location, and that wasn't enough to sustain the evapotranspiration we're going to experience over a long period of time. We gave ourselves some fluff there because we can actually transfer water from the large lagoon into the fishing lagoon, and we can also take fresh water from the water system, but as we just heard description of, that is chlorinated water, and we have to be careful with keeping our fish alive. So the best option there was to drill an additional water well. And again, when you look through those itemized numbers, I think you'll see a cost benefit there, because we didn't redo our test hole. We didn't redo. We got some economies of scale for drilling 2 wells versus 1 well, and you can see the deduct and then the addition of the other well. And so. And in my opinion, that was actually a pretty feasible option. I think it was less than $10,000 to add a second well to a bid item for our original well. Made some repairs to railings along both of those facilities, and effectively through that phase 1, phase 2 process, some of our railings have been hit by a careening vehicle off into the lake, which has happened multiple times in the construction process. So we've repaired some railings and made some improvements to try and negate those types of events as well. And then made some minor irrigation and concrete additions in and around the baseball complex, making sure that we delivered a comprehensive project. That was, again, one of the things that we heard from our neighborhood way back when this project started of, give us something that we can be proud of, give us something in our neighborhood that we can use, and make it comprehensive, make it work for us. And those were our goals and objectives of those minor additions. There also were the last item on the list is additional pumping. That's operational type work for this project. We do have a transfer pump in the main lake that sends this water to Thompson Park for its ultimate discharge. And those pumps kick on immediately after rainfall and try to pump the main lake down as fast and as far as they can. During the course of our construction project, there were a couple of times where that pump was not functioning and couldn't function. And we had construction items ready to go and our contractors waiting, and so we had some efficiencies by just allowing our contractor to do that work while he's there, pump the water for us. He's got a transfer pump, take care of those opportunities that kept our community safe, and made the lake function in accordance with the NFIP, the National Insurance Program, as well as facilitated the construction activities. That's the bulk of what's in the change order.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
None.
None?
Good job.
Here are matches for absolution.
Nope, sorry, Siri.
Siri was not recognized.
Sorry.
To speak.
When will this project be finished?
Great. We had an original. We had originally said July. I actually am very hopeful that I can still meet that criteria, but I did do, as part of this change order, a time extension because I had delayed my contractor. I had delayed our contractor waiting on ground temperatures for the final planting. My dad and all my uncles kept telling me I was planting a little too early, and so I waited on some ground temperatures to get the grass in the ground, and had delayed our contract a little bit, and so we're looking at basically by contract, fall is when the job will be complete. But I expect that, in fact, the park is usable and is being used to this date. I expect a substantial completion to our contractor sometime the mid to end of July.
When does this project start?
Oh, gosh.
Before my term on the council, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir. So I am the proud owner of this project and its completion because there's no one left. The original project, The original project was scoped in 2010, 2011, and was under construction or right at the bidding phase of construction when I got here in 2013. And so it's been going on and been since that kind of time period.
Thanks for that. I'd hoped it'd be finished by the end of my term, but
Be real close.
keep going.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry about that.
Any further discussion or questions for Mr. Sneeder-John? Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
If we don't have any further discussion on item 7L, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we accept 7L as stated.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Sherlin, a second by Councilman Smith. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. Just two more. So item 7, it's quite all right. Item 7M, Mr. City Manager.
Right, Mayor, 7M is the replacement of 3 police administrative vehicles. We have Donnie Hooper, Director of Public Works. We also have Chief Birkenfeld in here if you have any operational questions. Chief Johnson as well, I see. But this is 3 administrative vehicles. We work very hard with our public safety vehicles to try and get those replaced when they reach their limits on age and mileage. This is going to fall into that category. They are quite a bit less expensive, although similar in specification to the 3 patrol vehicles in 7N. But there are differences, so that's why they're a lot less expensive. Chief or Donnie?
Yeah, the main difference is these are not black and white cars. These are cars used by detectives or some of our supervisors who are on call to respond where they don't need all the police equipment, but they still need a vehicle to get from point A to point B. Most of the vehicles in our administrative fleet get about 10 years on average, so we have somewhere around 60 in this particular group, and so every year we plan to replace between 4 and 8 of those cars. Depends on what Fleet Services tells us as far as mileage.
I think that answers my questions. I was wondering the criteria for why we were changing cars. I think you explained everything to me. I just didn't know. So that's why I wanted to know.
Glad to.
Any other questions for Chief on 7M?
No.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, at this time, I'd ask for a motion on item 7M, please.
I make a motion we accept item 7M as stated.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Sherlin and a second by Councilman Tips on item 7M. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item passes with a 4-0 vote. On to our last item on consent, item 7O. Mr. City Manager.
All right, Mayor, we've got Laura Stores, Chief Financial Officer, Assistant City Manager, to present the item as we've talked about on a number of items today and other meetings. Supply chain and other issues are affecting acquisition of this latest ladder fire truck. Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. On this item here, this is actually the acquisition of a ladder-style fire truck. It's actually a change order related to the acquisition of it. This truck will be utilized at the new fire station that we are still working to construct that will be station number 14 out in the hospital district area. We had funded all of that through the current year's budget with cash funding. This change order comes about related to kind of a unique situation that we brought forward to council before. There was a demo fire truck that had originally been available that we were working to try to acquire. They were going to add on some equipment for us. Unfortunately, we didn't meet the time frame that they were requiring for us to go ahead and utilize that demo type fire truck. So now we are looking at bringing back the amount of what the full price of a fire truck is in today's dollars, and we're also looking at a longer time frame in order to for the full build out. Those fire trucks certainly take a long time to fully build out. We are hoping as soon as council authorize this, we can go ahead and get on a waiting list. So at this point in time, what they are quoting us is this is about an 810-day turnaround. So, and then one other item I wanted to mention is this is for a Ferrera truck, and that is what we use in all of our fire fleet. It is it's standardized. They have equipment that is interchangeable somewhat between those same trucks. Also, fire has their own mechanics that work on these. As you can imagine, they're very specialized pieces of equipment and trucks, and so it has been very efficient for us to utilize the same type of truck, so that Ferrera brand, in order for those mechanics just to keep that expertise, and also for us to exchange, equipment as we can between the trucks. Are there questions I can answer on this?
810 days. So
Yes.
I can see the need to be uniform in these trucks. With anything that's that long of a lead time item, we would ask for updates if that 810 days gets pushed back, and potential options if you guys have to start looking at those.
Absolutely. We will keep you informed on this. We think this will lock us in, but a lot's changed in the supply chain. And so we're just trying to manage that as we go forward. So we do hope to get on the list quickly, and we'll wait our 810 days. But we'll keep you in the loop if anything changes.
Mayor, also, we have been communicating with the fire department to make sure that they're going to be able to accommodate or live within, because we're going to open up a new fire station inside that period, well inside that period. We have reserve vehicles. We have multiple reserve apparatus, both ladders, sticks, and pumpers. So we will be able to use the apparatus that we have. It's not ideal, and I think everyone in the fire department will tell you the same thing. It's not ideal to use an aged piece of equipment rather than a new one, but we can make the ones we have work until we get the new one. We've made sure that we have capacity to make it a functional station as soon as it's open.
Absolutely.
Last question, Mrs. Storrs. The $1.5 million
Yes.
built into previous year's budget or this current year's budget that's coming up?
It is in the current year's budget that we're in right now. It was cash funding set aside of $5 million. That was for land acquisition, construction of the fire station, and the truck. We came back to council a few months ago as we were looking at some of the American Rescue Act plan dollars, those ARPA dollars. We had originally set some of those aside to address some of the athletic field lighting in the low to moderate income areas, if you'll remember, and we were able to efficiently get those projects done within the debt proceeds that had been issued. So council chose to go ahead and reallocate. It was about $2 million, and $500,000 of that was put towards this fire truck because we knew these prices were going up, and they were going up quick. And so there is now cash on hand to fund this purchase, along with we'll be bringing you construction contracts hopefully in the near future for that Station 14 as well.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further questions from Mrs. Storrs? No. Any further? Thank you. Any further discussion on this item 7-0? At this time, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. We accept 7-0 as stated.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilman Sherlin, a second from Councilman Smith. With no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes with a 4-0 vote. That concludes our consent agenda. We're doing pretty good on time. Do we want to take a break, Mr. City Manager, or you guys want to push through?
We are at the disposal of council. We are ready to go or stay or take a break. That sounds glib. I'm okay.
I like it. Okay. Well, so we have a public hearing, and we have just 2 items here. So I'm going to ask if we're good, let's just go ahead and push through with the last 2 items, and then we'll go to executive session. So in our non-consent, we now are moving on to 8A, Mrs. City Manager.
We've
Sorry,
got
Ms. City Secretary.
I'll respond to both. We've got Brady Kendrick, Senior Planner, here to present the item. This is a rezoning of a 17-acre tract in the southwest part of town, 88 lots. Again, I probably gave away most of the good stuff, but Brady, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is item or ordinance number 8058. This is to rezone approximately 17.42 acres from agricultural district to residential district 3 in section 65, block 9, located in Randall County, Texas, in the vicinity of Weston Drive and Arlo Drive. And this is in the Heritage Hills subdivision, and this will be the next residential phase of that subdivision, and will be composed of approximately 88 single-family lots. The Planning and Zoning Commission found that the request does conform with the neighborhood unit concept of development. While it does not conform with the comprehensive plan's future land use map category for the tract, which is the estate category, development conditions have changed in that area since the map's adoption in 2010, where this area has developed with a higher density single-family type product, and they found that this request would be in character with the area's zoning and development patterns. It would not result in any detrimental impacts to the area if approved. No public notices were sent as required by state law, and we have not received any public comment on this request as of this meeting. And the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend to approval of this item as presented with a 6-0 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Kendrick. So this is a public hearing. So at this time, we would open up a public hearing. If there are any citizens that would like to speak for or against this item, please come to the microphone. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and move on to discussion of this item. Council, do we have any discussion on item 8A? No discussion. Okay. We would entertain a motion at this time on item 8A, please.
I make a motion to accept 8A as stated on the agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilman Tips and a second from Councilman Smith on item 8A. Any further discussion at this point? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That item passes with a 4-0 vote. Moving right along to item 8B, discussion and possible consideration of 2 appointments to the Neighborhood Planning Oversight Committee. Mr. City Manager.
With the transition of council, we have 2 vacancies on our Neighborhood Oversight Planning Committee. Ginger Nelson and Frida Powell both used to serve on that. They're no longer eligible to serve on that. So, Emily, start soliciting volunteers.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Miller, and good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So the Neighborhood Planning Oversight Committee is an advisory committee, and it was established in 2016 with the interlocal agreement between the city and Potter County to oversee the planning process and implementation of those plans, and then also the allocation of funding. We have 4 adopted plans currently that you may be familiar with. North Heights, Barrio, San Jacinto, Eastridge, and we're planning to continue that effort after we finish the update to the city's comprehensive plan. And right now, Commissioner Coble and Commissioner Coffey represent Potter County on that. And we do have some items coming up, and we wanted to bring this to you today. I know you're expecting to fill out the rest of your council, but we'd like to be able to continue to have that committee meet and make sure we're getting council representation on that, because some of those items do end up in front of city council for recommendation and approval. So I think your options would be, if you wanted to appoint 2 today, that would be great. We'll keep meeting and taking care of that business. You could consider 1 appointment and wait until the full council is on board, or you could choose to delay that decision until then completely.
Ms. Kohler, thank you for that update. I do have an opinion on this, so I'd like to start the discussion if I could, and then let you guys weigh in. I know it's just an oversight committee or advisory role, but like this is a pretty important component in our city and in what we're doing. We're seeing a lot of things that have been very helpful in engaging with our citizens, everything from trash and community to civic pride. Some of our older, more neglected neighborhoods, I really feel like the revitalization effort has some good momentum. And so because of that, I think it's a pretty important role. I personally would like to fill one of the roles today. And then I'd like to wait on the rest of council to be seated so that we don't exclude the other two candidates when they get here if they would be a better fit or a good fit or have an interest in this. So that being said, I would be willing to serve and be honored to serve on that committee, but also would entertain either of the other two that will be here remaining if they felt like they would be better suited for this role. Discussion.
Whatever you decide. I'll be more than happy to, or go back to you.
Okay. Councilman Tips, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would be more than happy to serve on this committee for the 4 areas. Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a direction from staff in the way of like what your preference would be? Are you good with just one open seat until we would say mid-July probably?
Yeah, I think we could schedule our next meeting and have you join us, and that would allow us to keep moving items forward, which is really our concern right now. So yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay. Mr. City Manager, you have any insight on this one?
No, I think we do need to make appointments though formally though.
Right. Okay, so at this time, I am volunteering, and it sounds like Councilman Tips is also volunteering for this. So we have two potential volunteers that could sit in one seat on this. We would like to reserve, unless I hear any other discussion, we'd reserve the other appointment until after the other two councilors sat. So do we have any discussion on perhaps either myself or Mr. Tips that, would be better suited to sit on this committee? You got anything on your side? I know you're willing to. I really want to throw you in and get you to work, but
no, I'm good. I mean, I think it's a worthy cause. I think we need to be there. I think their voices need to be heard. So no, I look forward to it. During the campaign, we met a lot of people in that area, the ones that are active, and I think it's a good thing.
Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. Now, for clarification, what you're submitting is that we too would fill one seat? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm sorry. We have two here that are both willing to volunteer.
Okay, I got you.
We need to appoint one of us at this point, just hearing that Mr. Sherlin or Councilman Sherlin did not necessarily nominate himself, and we haven't nominated him. So I tell you what I would like to do. I'm good with waiting until the other two council members are seated for me to put myself forward to try and serve on this committee, and then I would appoint and nominate Councilman Tips to this.
Okay, question. Mm-hmm. Was the consensus that we will wait till the other two seats are filled? Or would you want to fill these two seats today? What's the...
I think that it would be helpful if we had one seat filled today. And I know, Mayor, you're a business owner in one of these areas. You've been involved with these initiatives that we've been working on. I know you have a lot of experience already with, and so I feel like we can just keep going uninterrupted. And then I think maybe, Mr. Tips, if you want to keep your name on the list, and then when the final council members join you, then have the discussion again, and it might continue to be your name.
I think that's great.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I know I probably misconstrued it a little bit when I said we had two volunteers. I was only saying we have two up here that need to fill one vacancy, and then the other vacancy would be filled in mid-July, let's say. So I will not nominate myself, but I would ask if anyone would like to nominate me for this.
I will nominate Cole to fill that seat.
Okay. So we have a nomination, and I'm going to ask for a little help here from Ms. City Secretary. In this nomination, do we need a motion and a second on this in any certain form?
And I'm going to look at Emily or Andrew. I don't know that this one has to be appointed by full council.
I don't know.
It wouldn't hurt. We can
Yeah,
do it
I
to
think
be
it's-
safe. Make
It's
a
listed
motion
as
to
that.
appoint.
It's listed as a council action to appoint,
Yeah.
so it won't hurt to do that, though.
Let me ask Councilman Sherlin, would you restate yours as a motion?
I will make a motion to nominate Mayor Stanley to fill this committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
At this time, we have a motion and a second to nominate Mayor Stanley for item 8B, one of the two appointments for the Neighborhood Planning Oversight Committee. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That
So-
passes with a 4-0 vote.
We are appointing Cole Stanley to that committee, or Mayor Stanley to
That's
that
correct.
committee.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, that concludes all of our city business. We do have an executive session here, and I would ask our city attorney to read the language for a closed meeting, please.
Yes, sir. Pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, a closed session of the Amarillo City Council was announced on May 23rd, 2023 at 2:50 p.m. under the following authority. Section 551.072, discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, sale, or value of real property. A public discussion would not be in the best interest of the city's bargaining position. Section 551.087, discuss commercial or financial information received from an existing business or business prospect from which the city is negotiating for the location or retention of a facility, or for incentives the city is willing to extend, or financial information received by the same.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming to our council meeting. Appreciate your patience and your time. At this time, we are excused to executive session.